All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? It's a beautiful day out, and I appreciate everybody signing on for this crisis management for COVID-19, week number 11. Can you believe it's been 11 weeks? I mean, we're almost 3 months into this thing. We're going to do a legal and regulatory update today. We've got Andy Barr here to join us, so we got other great guests. We appreciate so many of you filling out a survey that we sent out this last week to give us feedback on what you needed. We also appreciate the fact that a lot of you are writing questions in during the week, so we're going to be covering a lot of those. But one of the things you said in the survey was we want to think strategically. We love the updates and we need them. What does it look like looking ahead? So we've got two great guests to help us with that also towards the end of the program today. We're going to cover Andy. We're going to start out with Congressman Barr, and then we're going to do some legal and regulatory updates, and then we'll talk about the economic impact, and we're going to wrap up with some strategy around how we help our organizations be stronger and move through this in a positive way. Andy, we are just delighted to have you here with us. Oh, let me hear. I got all the pictures in front of me. Let me pause for a minute. Jim Morris is back, thank goodness, and he's got updates because things are changing every week. A little bit more about Andy in just a minute. We've got Beth Davisson, who's the founding Executive Director of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce Workforce Center. I'll give you a bunch of detail on her and that organization. And then Brad Patrick is going to take us home at the end with information about strategically, how do we approach this thing and how do we make the best of it and how do we strengthen our organizations through this process. And of course, Allison and Autumn are here to help us out. Chase couldn't join us today. He's tied up, but we're going to have a great day. Let's move right forward to Andy. Andy, oh my gosh, you're back in Washington last week and some big things came down. You worked hard on the PPP, and I know you've got some updates to share with us, so we really appreciate you being with us. Let us know how things are going.
Well, thanks, Lyle. Thanks for having me again. And, you know, one thing that small businesses and small business owners need and deserve is certainty. That is for sure. And unfortunately, Congress and the government is not doing a great job delivering certainty. On the one hand, I know many business owners out there want stability in this PPP program. On the other hand, we've heard from many constituents, small business owners, that they want some tweaks to the PPP program because they have not been able to take advantage of the full amount of the loan for purposes of forgiveness. And so that's really what has motivated many of the changes that were made in the bill last week. And I'll tell you a little bit about that legislation. But first, let me just say there's a couple reasons I don't think that the bill that passed last week, and I know Jim probably will go through those changes, but there's a couple of reasons why I don't think that bill in its current form will be the ultimate law. One is that, and I voted for it, again, because I've heard from many restaurant owner constituents and small businesses that do need to take advantage of this program on a different basis and for a longer period of time because they haven't been able to achieve the full forgiveness of the program, the forgiveness that the program could offer to them. But one is that the bill itself was kind of hurried through. It wasn't as well thought out, I don't think, as we would hope. It was a bipartisan bill. As I said before, I voted for it because I think it does make some progress in some areas. But the Senate has a different version of this bill, and I think it will undergo some modifications. Just a little history in the way that this bill, the Paycheck Protection Reform Bill, passed last week was there's a congressman from Minnesota, Dean Phillips, who didn't really want to vote for an earlier bill that the majority passed, but Speaker Pelosi had a conversation with him and said, "Hey, well, what do you need in order for me to get your vote on this bill?" And he said, "Well, can you work with me on modifications to this paycheck protection bill?" So she gave him the vote on that bill, but it wasn't a bill that went through regular order. So it doesn't have kind of the full legislative process imprint on it, if you will. So that's why it's going to undergo some modifications. The other reason why I don't think it's going to become law as is because it was passed with 71 proxy votes, and that is subject to litigation, ongoing litigation in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia right now. This is the first bill in history that was passed using the proxy voting method, and I think it has some constitutional problems. I think the way in which this bill was passed violates Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution. So I wouldn't take it to the bank that this bill that was passed by the House last week with my support will actually become law. Having said that, let me tell you a little bit about what the bill attempts to do, because the Senate is going to have its say in this. But the bill extends the period for using the loans to 24 weeks from 8 weeks. It changes the 75-25 rule of payroll to 60-40. So in other words, 40%, if this bill were to become law, 40% of the proceeds of the loan could be used for non-payroll. Also, it extends the deadline to apply for PPP to December 31st from June 30th. And it changes prospectively the term of the unforgiven portion of the loan from 2 years to 5 years. Again, some businesses have expressed a little bit of frustration that the rules are changing in the middle of the game. Other businesses and lenders are also expressing that frustration. Other businesses, though, are expressing appreciation and want something to happen here because they want the 75-25 rule to change and they want more time. 8 weeks extended out beyond 8 weeks to maybe 16 or 24 weeks as this bill proposes to do. In terms of the 2 year to 5 year change, the bill originally just changed the term of the loan from 2 years to 5 years. That was modified at the end to be only for those loans to be originated on a prospective basis. So for those of you who have a 2 year term on an unforgiven portion of your loan, and it's an already originated loan, count on that. Count on the 2 years. Don't count on the 5 years. And many of the community banks and credit unions that I've talked to about this change, they're not very happy. And that's there's not a lot of appetite for holding, these loans for 5 years. And so there was a concern about lender participation. And so it was modified so that the length of time would be extended to 5 years only for new loans, for those loans originated prospectively. Now, let me tell you what the Senate is telling us that they're looking to do. I did talk to Senator McConnell's chief of staff this morning, and they looked at what we did. They also have signaled that they're not going to take up any legislation that was passed via this probably unconstitutional proxy voting method. So that throws the Phillips bill into total uncertainty. But the Senate also has a bill, their own bill, that Senator Rubio has worked on, and it is a bipartisan bill as well. It's the Rubio, Cardin, Collins, Sheehan Paycheck Protection Program Extension Act. They're going to be having a conference today about this bill. They are not going to take up the Phillips bill. They're not going to take up the bill we passed for the reasons that I pointed out, because they think that bill was passed unconstitutionally. But I do think that they are going to be discussing whether or not this week they're going to take up this Rubio Cardin bill. And it's a little bit different. It doesn't do anything to the length of time, as far as I know. The latest version I've seen does not do anything in terms of extending out the term of the loan for 5 years. But it does extend the deadline to apply for a PPP loan from June 30th, 2020 to December 31st, 2020, just like the bill that was passed out of the House. It also allows borrowers 16 weeks to use their loan funds instead of 8. So whereas the House bill extended the time frame to 24 weeks. Senate bill looks like it's extending the time to 16 weeks. The maximum loan amount a borrower could receive would not change. So it's still 2.5 times payroll or $10 million, whichever is less. It would allow borrowers to use loan funds to purchase personal protective equipment. It would also clarify that borrowers who have maintained payroll for 8 weeks will not lose loan forgiveness due to the extension of the program to 16 weeks. And it will also clarify in statute the lender hold harmless provision. So it would ensure, once again, that lenders are not held liable for borrower certification and documentation that they provide when applying for a PPP and subsequent forgiveness. Additionally, lenders who followed PPP guidance released by SBA and Treasury would not be held liable for doing so if that guidance changed. So those are the kind of the key provisions in the Senate bill. So the big difference is 16 weeks as opposed to 24 weeks. 2 years, the term stays 2 years for all loans, both previous loans and prospective loans. And it restates that hold harmless provision, the limited liability for lenders provision. It also allows funds to be used for personal protective equipment. And the 75-25 rule, it's unclear what the Senate is going to do on that, but the word is that they may do exactly what the House did, 60-40. So again, providing additional flexibility, which is something that many of my constituents have asked for, more flexibility for the non-payroll portion of the proceeds of the loan. One final point, and then I'll turn it over if anybody has any questions, Lyle. And that is the loan forgiveness application. On May 15th, the Department of Treasury and the SBA released the application for PPP loan forgiveness. If there are any bankers or CPAs on the call here who have looked at this, you'll understand why many small businesses are and banks and credit unions are frustrated with this application. 11-page application, multiple pages of instructions. It was a hard vote for me because, again, businesses deserve certainty, and here we are changing the rules. You've got a lot of businesses out there that relied to their detriment on the 75-25 rule, paid people to not even come in, spent their whole loan to do what the government said that they should do. And here we are on the 7th, 8th week of the program, and Congress comes in and is attempting to change the program again. At the end of the day, I voted for it because I did also have constituent small businesses that were asking for the flexibility, that couldn't use the full amount of their loan proceeds the way they wanted to, were not able to rehire all the people and bring them back, and want an extension of time beyond the 8 weeks so that they could realize the full amount of forgiveness. For example, some businesses, because they haven't been able to take advantage of the full amount of the loan, they're going to, if this stays 8 weeks, they're just going to give back some of the proceeds of the loan because they don't want to incur additional indebtedness. So, on balance, I decided that it was probably, there's good and bad. The bad is that you've got businesses that relied to their detriment on it, and they followed the rules, and now we're changing the rules. On the other hand, there's businesses out there that are asking for the additional flexibility and the additional time. So I get it. I think it's an imperfect situation. I think the best thing I can do at this point is try to get a streamlined forgiveness application, as streamlined as possible. And in terms of the frequently asked questions, all I can say to you is I think that's why it's so important that in the Rubio-Cardin bill, whatever bill comes out of the Senate, there needs to be express statutory safe harbor for people who are businesses that are following the rules as they existed at the time that they made those decisions. So, the Cardin or the Rubio-Cardin bill does have that language in there, which I think is important given how frequently the rules have changed with this program.
The other thing, Andy, I'd like to let you know on that topic, the frequently asked questions, I think it's question 13. I'm not asking you to look at it, but the frequently asked question number 13 or 17, literally, I think 17, says you're only bound by the frequently asked questions that existed at the time of taking whatever action you took. Well, then in the Friday night, May 22nd releases where they had all of these new final interim rules, they slipped in, and I've talked to the group about it last week, they slipped in a comment that said the frequently asked questions are the non-binding frequently asked questions, and it went on to say something else. And I alerted the people on this call. I'm like, all of a sudden, I told you all along, hey, the SBA and Treasury say these are binding as of the date that it was released. They slip into this interim rule that the whole frequently asked questions that people have been relying on throughout are, quote, non-binding. And I don't know whether that means non-binding on the government, non-binding on the Treasury or the auditors that are going to investigate, non-binding on the lenders, or that means that you couldn't have ever relied on them because they're non-binding on the people who borrowed money. And that's scary for them to say all along, you can rely on this because this is the only thing out there, and then turn around and say, oh, those are non-binding. And now they can legally go after everybody. It's the Treasury Department and the SBA botched this from the beginning. It's not you all with the loan process. You reached a very quick, everybody can complain about it. But I said from week one on, these things usually have regulations built into them for 6 months where everybody fights over what every word will mean. And instead they had to do it within a month, and then they were 2 months late getting them out. But just so you know how critical that safe harbor is, when the department has now said, oh, these things that we literally told you in one of the FAQs that this, you're not bound by any subsequent guidance, then they slip in the word it was non-binding. That could mean that it's non-binding on them, and now they can come after all of us who relied on it. So I wanted you to know how scary that is to a business owner or somebody giving guidance to a business.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jim, and I'll bring that up to them. We'll bring that to their attention. And they did make them interim final rules, which means that they go into effect immediately and then have comments afterwards because of the time sensitivity of this program. So, but I'll bring that up, and I think that's all the more reason why we need the additional hold harmless provisions in the bill that comes out of the Senate. But we'll mention that the fact that they call it non-binding in the regulation. We'll mention that to Treasury and let them know that they've created a whole lot of confusion with that.
Yeah, that would be good.
All right, Allison or Autumn, other questions?
I think that Allison and Autumn, I want to apologize to everybody. I think Allison and Autumn are dealing with the issue that we apparently have with Zoom capping our attendance all of a sudden at 100 people. So yeah. I don't know that they're on right now.
Boy, we apologize for that. We pay for 1,000, so somehow this call is capping at 100. We're trying to get to the bottom of that, but it doesn't look like there's any way you can change it once you've gotten started. So we may have to just follow up immediately after the call with the recording, which we do anyway. But
Hey, Lyle.
Yes, Andy.
Before I jump off, for those who were able to make the 100 in this call in the Zoom, before I jump off, I would love to hear from the folks on the call, the small businesses on the call, and presumably most or all of them are my constituents, what they think about the change. Number one, I know everybody wants certainty, and having a change this late in the time frame is difficult. But is the change on the 75-25 to 60-40, is that a welcome change for most of them? Is a change in terms of the extension of time within which you can use the proceeds, is that a welcome change? Or is it a headache that they're changing it late in the game? There's two sides to that coin, and I'm just curious where most people are on this call.
I'll tell you one thing, and hopefully people were, I'll read you one right now. Welcome change. If a decision is made soon, it's a welcome change. Both are welcome changes. I was going to tell you that my clients are considering the 60/40, the biggest part of this, as well as the 8 weeks to 24 or to 16. The frustration is for those that were so proactive that they got their application in on time, that they did everything they were supposed to, they're screwed because they did the 75% in the first 8 weeks, or they killed themselves to comply with the directives that they were given by the SBA, and it created the problem of paying people to stay at home or doing other things. And I was going to put this down on the screen if I can get it to work. I wanted you to see it. I know you're familiar, but I want everybody else to see the question 17 as of May 27th, which is, they've got an update that they did last week. This is on the treasury.gov. I filed or approved a loan application based on the version of the interim final rule published on April 2nd. Do I need to take any action? It says no. Borrowers and lenders may rely on the laws, rules, and guidance available at the time of the relevant application. So we were relying on question 17 for me to give guidance to people saying, look, if you signed this under the April 2nd guidance, or the FAQ that was published on May 14th or whatever, you're stuck with that FAQ. You're not stuck with the one that came out 2 months later or 2 weeks later. But the new interim rule makes it sound like this question number 17 that I put on my screen does not apply, and they'll do whatever they want to do. But I'll tell you just from mine, and we did have polls we were going to do, and the whole system seems to be broken right now with this cap on people and so on. We had a poll that kind of went after the PPP, and I didn't have one that went after the changes to it to ask how they felt. But we had some really cool Zoom polls we were going to do, and I don't know whether we're going to have the ability. But
I think that's why it's so important that we get a streamlined, simplified loan forgiveness application for smaller loans, because people, so many businesses were relying on these rules as they were shifting around and changing, and there needs to be just a very simplified recognition that they did the best they could under the circumstances and get these loans forgiven.
That sounds good. All right.
All right, Lyle, thanks for having me on again.
Okay, before you let go, anything else come in just now? I see some good comments, but I think we've shared them with you. Andy, awesome to have you on here. We appreciate it. Keep working at it. And,
Andy, the one comment that just came in that I thought I would share with you is, because they only have this week or this week and next week left on the PPP, whatever action the Senate's going to take, and I know you're not in the Senate, or when it comes back, it needs to be done quickly on the 60% instead of 75%, because they have no time to fix that. And that's the problem I see, is the 2 years to 5 is prospectively, not retroactively. So anybody that got the 2 year before, it's not going to change theirs. Then the other thing is the 75 to 60, you may have 50% of the people, it may not impact them at all, because they were stuck under the interpretation that SBA was forcing on them.
Yep.
So there may need to be some retroactive relief to those that relied on the SBA and lost the 15% that they could have handled doing on something else, which is a whole other nightmare of financial investment and so on. And I don't know how you can fix it.
Yeah, that's why this was so complicated to change the rules. But I do see that the comments here are similar to comments that I'm receiving from in my office, that on balance, many of them wanted the additional flexibility, even though some businesses have already relied on that 75-25 rule and have kind of exhausted their proceeds. But many other businesses want the flexibility here, with the remainder of their loan. So not an ideal situation, no matter how you look at it, but we're trying to get as many businesses through this difficult time as possible. And we'll see what the Senate produces. I think the House is going to have to take whatever the Senate produces, because of the uncertainty with the procedure by which we passed the bill last week.
Right, and we're going to get, this was my slide that I put up there that I was going to talk about. We're going to talk about a little bit of that, including the thing that as an attorney scared the heck out of me, which is this little thing here, which is called our Constitution, that I put my highlighter laser point on. Voting by proxy, allowing somebody to vote harvest in Congress is an extremely scary thing.
Yep.
I can understand doing remote voting, but this vote by proxy where Speaker Pelosi or Minority Whip can collect votes and then say this is how everyone voted, removes accountability, and it's not what our Constitution requires. So I have serious concerns about the way they did that whole thing, as well as I know you did and several others, because it wasn't just people remote voting, it's people literally doing it through, I think you said there were several that were just proxy, or were they all proxy?
71 votes were delivered by proxy. That was the first time in 231 years of congressional history. And I signed on to the litigation in the federal court to challenge the constitutionality of that procedure. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of uncertainty with the way they passed the bill.
Yeah. So we'll get back into that PPP here in just a second. If you want to listen to what I've got to say about it, feel free to hang on. But I think that we've covered a lot of the questions now.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time. Thanks.
You bet. Thanks, Andy. Have a great week.
Thank you.
All right, Jim. You've been involved already, but we're going to pitch over to you. And again, we apologize for the problem. You know, I've heard some nightmares about Zoom, but we've just it's all worked out so well for us. So I guess we'll be investigating this one. Sorry that some people got blocked out of this call.
Right.
But,
And I will say, in defense of Lyle and his group, I know from a church service I tried to do a couple of weeks ago that I control, Zoom has had issues where there are certain things that just don't work. And they announce it later that they had a technology issue, and this may have been a false cap on the number of people. So, and obviously we've had many more than 100 in the past, so we're frustrated to not have half the people on the call as well. So you ready to run with this?
yeah, let's go.
All right, so everybody, this is a brand new thing we're doing, and I'm running it all right now because of the technology issues, so I'm going to screw it up. I'll just tell you that now. So get your mouse ready and get your clicker ready, or however you're going to do this, because we're going to do a 3-question poll about the PPP right now. So you should have on your screen some questions here, and we wanted to have everybody answer these questions, and then I'm going to end the poll here in just a little bit, and then I will also go ahead and move forward with some launching of the results, and we'll talk about it a little bit. And I'm also going to go ahead and go back to the page that we have, and once this is done, we'll move forward. But I'm going to give it a couple of minutes. I want to thank Congressman Barr for all of his efforts. I think the way that he voted, the reason and rationale of what he did is, and I don't think he's on, so this isn't for his ears, but just for yours. I think everything that he did in this was done the right way. I also understand Congressman Massey's position, but I also think that he's going to have to answer to his constituents about the way that he did it, because it creates some concerns and some problems for his constituents. But part of the reason why a no vote almost came out for a lot of people was because this is being done by proxy. And whichever political belief you have, allowing somebody to collect votes and then say that this is the way that everybody told them to vote is a very scary proposition. If they would have done something with Zoom or some other meeting capability video beforehand, I think I'd be okay with that, but a proxy vote's scary. So right now we have several people who have voted. So let me go ahead and I'm going to end the voting in 10 seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, you need to get your vote in. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. All of a sudden, everybody started voting, so I'm giving it a couple of seconds more. And if you haven't voted, too late. All right, so I'm going to share the results. Lyle, are these on the screen? Can everybody see the sharing of the?
Yes.
All right. Can you also see my PPP Flexibility Act slide behind it? Because I don't get to see what you guys see. Okay, so let's look at this for a second.
47% of us took the loan.
Yeah.
Took a PPP loan.
I will tell you, if you didn't take a loan, but you're in a position to take one and you fall under the confines of week 2 guidance that I gave, you ought to take a look at still doing it, because now there's about, I didn't look last night to see, I think it's about $100 billion still left to loan. I think the vast majority of small businesses received a loan. And now they're down to the people that just didn't bother to fill one out. If you qualify, you ought to do it, because now you're going to get the benefit of a 5-year payback at 1% or 100 basis points above prime. You're going to get the benefit of 60% toward payroll, not 75. You're going to get the benefit of any of the things that they're going to fix in this new loan. And I will go ahead and say it. Even though you weren't the early bird to catch the worm, you're going to be the smartest bird, because you waited until they fixed all the brokenness of the early ones. Sorry for all of you that did everything early. The other thing is that the amount of people that turned it back in, it's really, unless you were in the publicly traded business and you were being chastised, Steak and Shake, Ruth's Chris, all of those, the Hilton properties, the Marriott properties. I don't think that people needed to turn it back in. I think that the turning in, people were afraid of it, and they made it so scary with their threats, and I think a lot of businesses needed it. But I understand there's a lot of people who just decided we're not going to deal with it. There was supposed to be, and I see that the second and third ones are the same. We actually had a different one that was, and it didn't make it. I think it's part of the glitch here. The third one was supposed to say, and we won't poll you on it. The third question was supposed to say, how far through the PPP are you? Did you just get it? Are you halfway through? Have you spent all of the money? And so these changes won't really affect you. And that's the one that I added this morning because of the Flexibility Act. But unfortunately, it is what it is right now, and I don't have a whole lot of guidance for you. So we've got a couple other polls we're going to run, and I'll throw those up there here in just a second as we get to those screens. We hope you guys like the polling, because we know it's broken this week. We get it. It's not our fault, we don't think, but polling is a way for us to actually capture what you guys think about things as we're going through it, and we can play some things with it. So I wanted to put that on the screen. That was supposed to be run by Autumn, but they're still trying to figure out what the heck happened to our system. So, all right, going back through it, I'm not going to repeat what Congressman Barr had to say, but this was adopted on Friday by the House. For those that don't understand how our bicameral system, which is what it's called, works, a bill is not law until it's signed by the president. It can't be sent to the president to be accepted until both chambers approve it. The House can adopt a bill and push it to the Senate. The Senate can adopt it and push it to the House. It has to be approved by both. Usually there's a whole bunch of back and forth on some of these. They've rushed them through, like the one that Congressman Barr talked about, which is the Flexibility Act. PPP was clearly broken. Everybody knows that. I've been covering it since it started. The SBA and the Treasury, in their effort to write in things that were not in the bill, basically to try to spackle it back together, They really created problems with their 75% and comparing it to the first quarter that had, 9.75 weeks would be 75%. They didn't fix that for 3 weeks. We were giving guidance to you about the problems related to that all the way through. Unfortunately, the House cannot move on a dime. The Senate cannot move on a dime. So this took a while to fix, and those of you that got the money early on, I was telling you all the way through. You can go back and look at week 2. I literally said, this will be fixed. I don't know whether it'll be the SBA. I don't know whether it'll be the Treasury. I don't know whether they'll come back in the second phase and fix it. Unfortunately, none of them fixed it. And they had every opportunity to do that with the frequently asked questions. They had the opportunity to fix it with the interim rule, which they were a full month late. So there were a lot of things that could have been adjusted, and they didn't do that. They left it to the Senate or the House, the 2 chambers. They're doing it as quickly as possible. When you go to the voting booth, this is not Congress's fault trying to fix this. This is the Treasury trying to do what they thought they should do, and the SBA, which has been broken for years, trying to do something that was out of their league. But not yet law. So everything I'm about to say, it is not yet law. You have to wait until the Senate adopts it to figure out whether it's going to be law and which version. You'll notice down here, I pointed out the Senate has a different version. Theirs had 16 weeks. The Congress bill has so many issues. I think it's going to be thrown out because all it takes is one constitutional challenge to the illegality of the way that it was adopted, and the whole bill gets destroyed. And then you guys are sitting there going, is it 8 weeks or 24 or 16? So I seriously believe the way they're going to Band-Aid this is that the Senate will be the one to adopt a bill, send it back to the House, and then the House will have to adopt it. And this time around, they probably won't use proxy bills or proxy voting. I think that's what's going to happen. We'll have to wait to see. So the non-retroactivity of the maturity is a big thing I wanted you all to know about because lenders may have been concerned about the 2 years to 5 years and whether they want to be a part of it, but all my clients are going, we want to be a part of a 5-year payback, and it's unfair to us that it's not retroactive. I look to see that change, and they're going to make it retroactive. If the lender and the borrower want it, the lender can sell the stupid thing if they don't want it, so they don't have to worry about it being over their head. That frequently asked question was like number 8, where they said you can sell it. So if they don't like holding it for 5 years, sell the stupid thing. But I think the lender or the borrowers need to have the ability to pay it back over an extended period of time. A couple of things that weren't covered. One, again, the covered period goes to December 31. The 8 weeks goes to the earlier 24 weeks or December 31. Look for that to change because of the Senate. The rehire is a big one he didn't mention, which is they're extending the rehire, which I told you was June 30th. They're going to extend that to December 31st. That will give you a tremendous amount of time to spend the money. I gave you the example of the company that has the factory up in Chicago. They did what I told them to do. Don't waste your money. Hire those people you need to hire. Whatever calculation doesn't work, pay it back at 100 basis points plus prime. They did that. They didn't have to worry about all of this concern now of dumping money. A different client I have literally sent a letter that I'm frustrated about, just telling everybody, hey, we're going to pay you to stay at home. And I said, don't do that. Don't do that. Hold the money, use it for an investment purpose because you signed a declaration that literally says we need this money for continuing operation of our business. If you've been trying to flood your employees with cash, you need to very carefully get accounting and legal guidance on what to do, because I suspect in the next 3 or 4 days, you're going to have a new bill that says you didn't have to do that. Don't pay people to stay at home. Hold that money at the 1% or whatever it is, because they're going to change the law, and then you'll have the money that'll be forgiven over a longer period of time. The other thing there is, and oh, it's on the next screen, sorry. He didn't cover these either, so my clicker went dead. Sorry. All right, there's no reduction to forgiveness. If there was an inability to return to the same level of business activity due to compliance with federal requirements between March 1st and December 31st. Guess what, gang? That affects all of you, because if you live in the state of anywhere but Utah, every single state had a limitation on the ability to operate. So if I have any Utahnians on here, I think that's how you say it, you don't get to listen to this, but everybody else, between March 1st and December 31st, every single state had a limitation on your ability to operate. So you can have a savvy accountant and a savvy counsel walk you through the way to do this, to explain that you could not possibly operate at full functioning between March 1st and December 31st because there were governmental requirements regarding sanitation, social distancing, or other worker or customer safety requirements. If you can demonstrate that, you do not have to pay back or you don't have to go to a full 100% capacity of where you were on employees. Also, if you sent the letter that required them to come back to work because you're going to do something and they refuse, that we talked about that last week, the 4 different things. The one I didn't like on there was a tattletale of your employees. Be careful with that, reporting them to the state. So those are the concerns, but this was in there. The other one is the deferral. We talked about that, the loan deferral. Well, he didn't talk about that, actually. It went from 6 months to the December 31st, whichever is the latest. And the last one is the big one, because you had a 6.2% employer deferral, which you had to pick or choose. You could not receive that at the same time you received PPP monies. So you were required to pay your employer portion of taxes during the PPP. This bill has lifted that. Wait to act on anything I'm talking about until it's been either adopted by the Senate or massaged out. Next week's meeting will probably be our biggest one to talk about this, because that's where we will have a final bill signed into law by the president, whatever bill it is. So that's why I said down here, it's headed to the Senate where it's expected to pass, not necessarily this version, but a version that's similar. It is not yet law. That's why I put it under all italics, bold, underline. Until it's passed, you're stuck with the with the SBA guidance, which is a complete disaster. I would get advice from someone. I would get that advice on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. Why? Because I fully expect the Senate to vote on this on Wednesday. It will become law on Thursday or Friday, and you will know, because whatever the Senate sends to the House, they will rubber stamp. Just telling you that now. It will happen that way because there's not enough time, and constituents are angry about this 75% rule. They're angry because they're 7 weeks into the PPP. Some of you right now are ready to throw your computers because you can't believe that you operated under the SBA guidance up until today. I'm sorry, I had nothing to do with it. Don't blame the messenger. All right.
Moving along.
So that's the PPP guidance. I promise I'm going to get this done, and then we'll be going to everybody else's comments. I want to cover 2 things that have been asked. A lot of things are going on with the, sorry, hold on. Making sure I'm not missing any urgent things about this meeting. A lot of things have been asked about, hey, we have people who are refusing to take the test. We have people who are refusing to do temperature checks. We have people who are refusing to return to work. And I think it's time now, with the phases we have, where almost every business in Kentucky is allowed to operate starting today. Fitness centers, welcome to the game. I think there were dirt tracks, welcome back. I think you were June 1st too. I have no idea why you got excluded from earlier openings. If you happen to be a state park lodge, you're welcome back, except for 4 of them, which I think are at the end of the month, and I don't know why you got discriminated against. All joking aside, question that has come up from almost all of my clients and a lot of you: can employees refuse to return to work due to COVID-19? I want to walk through this because it's such a legal issue. There are two issues that come into play here: OSHA and the National Labor Relations Act. And yes, that scares people from a legal perspective, though. I want to tell you, and we've got a frequently asked question coming up about, can they refuse a test? So don't start sending those in if you want those on there. I'll cover those in a second. The short-term compensation, we got that covered here in a second. But this is just on, can they refuse? Older people, disabled people, immunocompromised people, all of that's going to fall under your ADA, ADEA, some of that under the FMLA, some of that under the sick leave, some of that under the emergency leave. This answer here does not cover anyone who has a valid reason for not being in the office. You're going to have to look at your ADA. You're going to have to sit down, talk to them about reasonable accommodations. This only deals with if somebody refuses to return to work under OSHA. It protects employees from any retaliation in circumstances where they refuse to perform an assignment that involves imminent danger. It is unclear right now as to whether COVID-19 constitutes imminent danger, but there is zero agency or court or administrative authority, including the NLRB and so on, that have declared COVID-19 as an imminent danger. I believe they will avoid that phrase because of this issue, because they can't have people refuse to go to a job site because they might get a disease, because this will then be used for next year's flu, 3 years from now, SARS or COVID-22, or anything else that comes up, and they cannot have people just not go to work because of an imminent danger from a disease that is well known. So, under OSHA, it's unclear what your answer is. The one thing that is clear, and there's case law out there, and it's the third bullet down here, you do not have to pay employees who refuse assignments. This does not involve anybody who needs an accommodation under ADA, anyone who claims the sick leave that you have to pay them under the FFCRA/CARES Act. You need guidance on those, but I'm just telling you flat out on OSHA itself, as of right now, there is no prohibition that allows, or no permission that allows them to just say, not coming to work because of COVID-19, but you still have to pay me. So don't pay them. You have the ability to require them to take a test and to come into work right now if you can do so safely, unless they fall under protected classification that we talked about before. NLRA, you have to be very careful of two things under the NLRA in taking any action against someone who says, I ain't coming in. One is a protected activity. If they do this on behalf of a group of people, it could be deemed to be a protected activity. Potential unionization or potential protected statement of, hey, we're trying to protect ourselves and you retaliated. So you need to understand that part of the NLRA if you fall under it. The other is a work stoppage due to an abnormally dangerous condition, which is part of the NLRA. Technically, the first one requires a group action on two or more. So if you have an individual acting on their own behalf saying, I ain't coming in because I'm going to get sick, does not qualify. If they try to drum up support, you have to be extraordinarily careful. And this gets into full-blown training, and we wouldn't have enough time in 4 hours for me to go through the pro-employee training, not anti-union training that you need to be giving to your managers to make sure they're not retaliating. This does not apply to individual complaints. You can replace striking workers, including those that refuse to come in due to abnormally dangerous conditions, but you cannot retaliate or withhold accrued benefits. I included this on here now because one of the backlashes I think are going to happen, And just mark my words, we talked about a little bit of COVID being used as a workers' comp claim and how to be careful with that. If you designate people as hazard pay, you may end up getting a backlash of workers' comp later. This is another one that I see some concerns about, because I could see a backlash later of NLRB complaints against employers who replaced people, and they're going to claim that it was either a unionization effort or what is called the virtual water cooler, where basically you can't monitor people's Facebook, you can't monitor their Twitter. I always caution employers about managers being friends on Facebook with somebody that could be potentially in a unionization effort, because the NLRB can use that against you later. So you have to have policies about what they can and can't, what managers can and can't do. You cannot stop people from posting on their Facebook page, because that's the brand new water cooler. Same thing applies here. I just wanted to make sure you're careful. I know for some of you, you're like, we don't have to worry about union. Yeah, be careful, because union is everywhere. You don't want to be anti-union. You just want to be pro-employee. And you also want to make sure you don't step on anybody's toes. All right, so where are we with short-term compensation? I saw that pop up on the screen. Angie, here's your answer. Short-time compensation is still broken. I don't know how many times I could just play back from the prior ones we talked about. But it's not just that it's broken. The whole system is broken. In fact, I put this on here. Today is the 1-month anniversary. May 1st, it was adopted. It is the law. The person that has been communicating with me has been promoted to executive director of KEWES, and she has told me it's not the law because the Department of Labor hasn't approved it. And I pointed out to her that we don't answer to the Department of Labor. You are independent, and you are supposed to be issuing the applications when the governor adopts the law. He didn't. Interesting thing, on Thursday, 28th, I think that's Friday. On the 28th, 29th, whatever day Friday was, sorry, Friday the 29th, governor announced a data breach. For any of you who have employees who submitted anything between, I believe, March the 10th and April the 23rd, there was a data breach. Anyone who had documents posted to their portal, apparently those were available to your friends and family and enemies and anyone else that may have possibly wanted to log in. Not much was put on people's portal. I don't know what they mean by identity. Most people didn't have to prove who they were when they applied in terms of attaching a document, but the KUIC has not explained what that means. Be on the lookout for an email/letter through the U.S. mail where they will advise you what happened with your application and what information was shared. You may want to let your employees know that as a courtesy. They haven't updated anything since the 28th about what happened. All they said was there was potential exposure of identity data, which means your social security number was compromised. Sorry, not trying to scare anybody, but when they say identity data, the only thing you put up there was your name, your social, your birth date, and your employer's tax ID. So if it's identity data, pretty sure it's what that means. But look for something in the mail. They'll have some free 6 months worth of or a year worth of screening protection of your social security number, and everybody should take advantage of it. The other thing is that there's a reorganization of the unemployment office announced. It will soon, I don't know what soon means, because soon we'll have an application online. It will soon be under the labor cabinet. They are bringing in new leadership. We told you that 3 weeks ago when the emails bounced back from the executive director, who was on here previously saying that if you were salaried, you didn't qualify for unemployment benefits because that was a labor dispute and contract, which most of you in HR were probably sitting there going, what? So he's no longer the executive director, apparently. We don't know who's going to come in. It's all being reassigned. I've seen that there's an attorney temporarily who I was dealing with as the attorney, who is now the executive director. I don't believe she's going to stay in that position, but nothing is getting done. To quote the governor, I'd like to read this because it mirrored what I've been saying for 6 weeks now, or 5 weeks now. It is time for better results from our unemployment insurance office. To answer the frequently asked question that has been frequently asked each week, there is no work share or short time compensation application because we don't have an executive director and we have no one who is helping employers walk through this. I will tell you, I received one blanket email Saturday. I think I told you about it last week. Saturday a week ago, that basically said, quit sending us letters because short time, as you know, as an attorney, you should be well aware, the law hasn't been adopted yet because the Department of Labor hasn't accepted our application. So your requests for status are not appropriate and you're an attorney, you should know that. And I wrote back to the non-attorney and said, as an attorney, I know what a regulation is. And I know that when it says you shall adopt an application, it means you shall do your job. So you are entitled to apply. They have 15 days to reject. They didn't reject any of mine. I now have a basis for a lawsuit against them if they ever challenge any of my multiple employers who submitted an application because they didn't do anything within the 15 days. Shame on them, not me. So just so you know, your employer handbook, COVID-19, if you have a copy of it, keep it. It's a collector's item because they pulled it off the website. If you don't have a copy of it, they don't have a new one for you. There's zero guidance. I know that I was asked not to rip into them as much as I wanted to. Trust me, I have not. Still, while I'm being good today, I'm not going to say anything else. But they are broken and they're not doing anything to fix it. It upsets me because one of the companies I'm dealing with, people out of Kentucky are getting unemployment payments from Michigan. They're not a Michigan employee, but Michigan is paying them because they can't get anything out of Kentucky and Pennsylvania and Maryland. And so other states are going above and beyond, and people will have to pay if they get money that they're not entitled to. But our system is just flat broken, and I've got people from the very first application date that still have not gotten paid. The other comment from last week, Josh Benton on the 28th or whenever the governor had this announcement, they proudly announced that they had done this week or last week 15,000 applications that came in from the first week. So they're still dealing with March and April applications, and we're on June 1st. That's not acceptable. So he proudly announced that they had handled 15,000 from the original batch, but that's not good enough. So I'm upset about the employers who promised their employees that they were going to get this, whether it was short time, whether it was full time, whether it was furlough or layoff. And I'm upset for those employees that can't buy their groceries because they thought that they were going to get this and the promise of unemployment benefits. And my fear is this: if Kentucky doesn't get their act together and you don't get the federal before June 30th, there won't be any federal to get because they're not going to backdate it and say, oh, whoops, sorry, you should have gotten this and you didn't. So here's your pool of $3,000 you never received. It's broken. And so somebody, if you know of anybody, reach out to them because real families are getting impacted by this, and people who are identical employees at a facility are being treated differently, and it looks like the employer is doing something wrong. I suspect some of you are going to get sued for that because somebody's going to think it's race or gender, or you did something to try to create problems for people. So it upsets me. So that's it. All right. Few recent questions. This is the last slide. I promise we're almost done. Can face shields be used in lieu of face masks? Yep. There's an easy one. So the EEOC came out with guidance that said that you can use different face shields. You can use, they have the plexiglass ones. There's a oh, and I misspelled Lou. I'm sorry. Trying to type this late. So there's a local facility here that sells the face masks that are just down the face. It's a really good company. You need to research it. I can't say the name. I don't want to get in trouble. But one of you can say it if you want. So that's the quick answer to that. EEOC, CDC, OSHA have said, come up with something. You can use a T-shirt if you want. You can use whatever you can to cover the face. They're being very lax about it. But in addition to that, the next one is, if they supply face masks, do they need to supply face shields? Qualified, yes. First, it says if they supply face masks. That was a question. You are required to provide PPE if you're in the state of Kentucky, because you are required to have employer-supplied PPE to protect your employees, which includes masks. So first part of that is not if, it's when. Second part is, do you have to supply face shields? The answer is qualified, yes, no. What does that mean? You have to supply face shields or other reasonable accommodations for those that cannot wear a normal mask. If somebody has asthma, if somebody has a heart condition, if somebody has panic attacks caused by face masks, the employer is required to come up with alternatives, just like you are throughout the rest of the year. Some type of alternative material or alternative device, or allowing them to work from home and telecommute, or anything else that you can do to reasonably accommodate. If you cannot reasonably accommodate, then that person can be put on sick leave, FMLA leave, any other type of leave that's available, but you have to supply other, so that's why I put there qualified. You must supply for ADA assistance. If the employee asks or you believe, remember, under ADA, they don't have to ask you for the accommodation. You have to be proactive. If somebody says, I can't breathe in this mask, and says because of my asthma or anything else, you have to do reasonable questions. Is there something else I can provide? What if we got you a face shield? What if we did other things? Keep that in mind, because there are other ways to do this. And so that's, I just want to make sure we cover that. Whoops. What legal repercussions are there if employees refuse to adhere to safety mandates? All right, the answer to this is in the governor's mandate itself. The phase opening from the governor requires compliance, and it literally puts the onus on the employer. If you cannot comply with all 14 of the mandates from the governor, do not open. You are required to continue your compliance with the governor's mandates. So to answer the question, if you cannot comply, then you must close. That's the May 11th memo. It's now been put into a May the 8th, and it's on the Kentucky covid19.ky.gov website. There is a full-blown order from the governor, memo from the governor, and phase opening instructions. And it says you must continue to comply. That's temperature checking, questionnaires in accordance with the CDC guidelines. The other one is the safe distance, social distancing, mandatory masks, mandatory hand washing stations. If you cannot comply, you have to close. This then dovetails with what we covered, I think, 3 weeks ago, which is, can we punish an employee for not practicing social distancing, not wearing the masks, not engaging in the mandatory requirements? The answer is yes. I'll give you an example. I went to Ohio this last weekend, went to see a friend. We went to a restaurant. He saw a doctor that he knew. Doctor came over, started chatting with him. Our tables were eerily 10 feet apart. It's really bizarre. If you've done it yet, it's kind of sad. But we went, doctor comes up, starts talking. Literally within 1 minute, one of the supervisors of the restaurant came over and said, which table are you at? Gentleman pointed to our table. looked at the other one, said, "Are you at the same table?" Knowing the answer was no, because there were only 4 chairs and none of them were empty. And he said, "We will be shut down if you are standing away from your table. You must leave and go to your table." So the answer to the question about do you have to adhere to the safety, it depends on your governor. Our governor adopted most of what Ohio had adopted because he got shot down on doing his own. The answer is if the employees cannot abide, or your customers cannot abide by the safety mandates, or you can't adhere to the promises of opening, you have to close. So force your employees to do it. If they don't do it, send them home, reprimand them, do whatever disciplinary action you have to do, because you now have a mandate from the federal government under the CDC and the EEOC and the OSHA to do this. The other bizarre thing is if you go into any of these, they actually have plexiglass separations at the bars now, keeping people from not social distancing. I haven't been to a Kentucky one yet, but I hope it goes away eventually. It's kind of sad to see. So, answer to the question, yes. If an employee's been around a person that tests positive, can you require testing? Answer, you can require testing anytime you want of any employee you want now, because EEOC has adopted COVID-19 testing. You may do it repeatedly. The question has become now, how often can I do it? Once a week, once every other week, once they've had it, how long does it qualify? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you because it's not a legal question. But yes, the EEOC and CDC now allow COVID-19 testing. Also, one of the questions asked earlier this week of me was people were scared to death of the testing, or they refused to go back because of the type of test that was there. If the test that you're requiring is the one that goes up into your brain, don't do that test. They have other testing that is available. I went and had one done a week ago Sunday at the old Walgreens on Executive Drive in Lexington, across from Hamburg. Whoops, sorry. It's 1 inch into each nostril, rotated 5 times, put it into the sleeve, put it into the little drive-through window. They have somebody there instructing you, windows up the whole time. You test, you get the results in about 12 hours, and it's not invasive at all. The one original test is the only one I'm aware of that is invasive. The rest of them are much easier. You can also, the question back to if they test positive, you don't have to let them back until they have been tested negative, and until they have been self-quarantined, and until they have been released by a primary care physician. So those are your answers. Follow the CDC, the local and the federal and the state guidance when you get the alert that the person tests positive, because you will get a tracer notification from somebody that's checking all of their background. Can an employee refuse to take the test and just self-quarantine? Nope. EEOC and the governor mandate requires compliance. If you require a test and they don't comply with your test, you do not have to allow them back into the workplace. So the question goes back to this one up above. You are now allowed to COVID-19 test, period. So if an employer requires it, the employee refuses, you don't have to let that person work, period. How do you address a positive response to CDC-oriented questions? You know, this is one I almost didn't put up here because I don't know the answer, but that's not fair not to put it up there. The answer right now is CDC and governor mandates require further action from the employer, including a primary care physician and referral, and self-quarantine for any answers that are yes. I think that's wrong. I'm not a medical physician. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a CDC specialist. I'm not on that side of it. But if you ask me if I've had a cough in the last week, the answer will be yes, because I have allergies. If you ask me, have I had, do I have a loss of sense of taste or smell, the answer will be yes. So right now, if you ask me these questions, my answers by themselves would cause you to send me for testing, because I have seasonal allergies. And so the problem is that after they did the guidance, they didn't come out and say, that there's any discretion. And this gets back to my concern legally, not from risk management, not from HR. Again, we talked about that last week, the difference between the types of guidance. My fear is if you don't have a properly trained healthy at work officer, it really creates problems, because I don't want to send everybody home who answers that they have allergies. And yet there's no guidance from our governor and no guidance from our state on what if somebody answers yes to these questions. It's literally, if you get a positive result to these, send them to a primary care physician. Well, what if they say to you, but I have allergies and I don't really want to go for testing because I was tested last week? What's the employer supposed to do? Let them come into work? Don't let them come in. I don't have a great answer for you, because after the issuance of this on May the 8th, May the 11th, the governor has not yet followed up with a whole lot of guidance, and that concerns me. And we've asked him last week, as you all will recall, we literally asked, can you give us a immunity for the healthy at work? Can you give us any parameters? Can you help us out? Because we're trying to give employers guidance on this. I haven't heard a word since then. And I think that they're missing an opportunity to say, look, do the best you can. You're immune from a lawsuit. Great. All right, look, if somebody comes in and they reasonably say, but I haven't had a change in any of my symptomology since last week or since yesterday because I can't breathe because of allergies and I'm allergic to ragweed or whatever it is, then you have the ability in good faith to make an assessment and go, this person doesn't have a temperature, answered yes to 2 of the questions, but has an alternative as to why we're letting them go to work. If they happen to have it, you don't get sued because you let them into work. Those are fears I have as an employer attorney representing various companies, and I just want guidance to help protect you all. So that's it. All right. Sorry that was long-winded, but there was a lot to cover.
And you get a chance to, we're going to keep moving here, but a couple of good comments on the questions when you get a minute to look. Somebody's worried about the Walgreens Abbott rapid ID test has unacceptable false negatives. And I haven't checked into that, but
I haven't either.
Yeah, but you just keep yourself quarantined for a while, okay?
All right, good. So I get to just go home now? See you guys.
I don't hang up on us quite yet. Thank you for all that good input. And others, if you have questions or comments, please make them. We love to have them. You know what? We're going to move right along. We're going to be here the whole till 1 o'clock today, I suspect. But the next speaker is, I am so delighted that she's with us. And she was tied up early, so I was really worried about our 100 cap. But Beth Davisson, thank you for your persistence. And we're delighted to have you here today. Beth is the founding executive director of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce Workforce Center. The Workforce Center is a part of the Chamber. It's the state's largest, the Chamber is the state's largest association that advocates for businesses across the state. She actually started there in 2017, and she was the original hire, but now she's got 9 people on this team. And the interesting thing is that we are the first chamber in the nation to have this, and now chambers all over the nation are starting this because, you know, this workforce has been a flexible item. I mean, just a few months ago, you couldn't get any people. Now we've got people standing in line trying to get payments. So it's a lot of changes gone on, but she really brought this thing along and has made, you know, huge impact in better understanding the workforce. And I wanted her to talk to us today about what she sees in her crystal ball, because I know the game has changed a lot in the past 3 months. She's got a great background for this. She actually got a degree from University of Kentucky, an undergraduate degree, and she got an MBA from Sullivan. She's spent 10 years working on workforce development issues, you know, prior to even working for the chamber. This is her issue. She's been honored in Louisville as a top 40 under 40 and named to the top 20 people to know in human resources by Business First in Louisville. She's also a previous employers included Greater Louisville Inc., which is the chamber over in Louisville, and the Oliver Group, which is a consulting firm, and Sullivan University. So a lot of great experience. Also been recognized by Kentucky SHRM for her outstanding spirit, think that Spirit Award is called the Lyle Hannah Spirit Award. It's the only big award they give, but I'm really honored to be associated with her in that regard. She also is the Workforce Readiness Chair for the Kentucky Society for Human Resource Management. So a ton of experience. Beth, I didn't give you much time, so jump in and take it away. Tell us what we ought to expect with workforce issues in the state of Kentucky.
Yeah, thank you, Lyle. That was such a kind introduction. And I'm really glad that you called out the Lyle Hannah Spirit Award, because it is named after you. And I think that that is an honor. And I always find the more time I can spend with Lyle Hannah, the better. So thank you for having me on today. It's really good to be with you all. My name is Beth Davisson. We're going to talk a little bit about the workforce and economic implications we see in the short term as we come out of COVID-19 and our economy starts to turn back on. So do I have the ability to take control of the presentation, or you all do? Okay, all right, that was magical. Thank you so much. I think that was probably Allison. Appreciate that. So this slide is here to kind of let you see all of my bosses. The Kentucky Chamber's Workforce Center is guided by a board of business leaders. Each and every one of these leaders are strong business leaders in their own right, have stepped above and beyond the call duty for workforce in Kentucky, and they guide every single thing that our center puts out and creates. I'm excited to see, I think one of my bosses, John Green, is on the call. So shout out to John Green from Keeneland if that's you. His picture is on here as well. And I've got two of our staff members on the call today as well. I know Sonia Osman and Sarah Tracy with the Workforce Center is on here, so hello. But basically, just to let you know that everything we do is truly guided by business. So can move on, Allison. So what we see, there's a control scenario and a pessimistic outlook on where the numbers are charting nationally. And we're really watching this very closely to see what it's going to look like coming out of COVID-19 as our economy is now turning back on. And in both of those scenarios, both the control, hi John, I see you too, both the control and the pessimistic, what we see is we see ourselves, we're heading into and are already began a 3-quarter recession, and it's already started. And so we can see consumer demand is going to be falling. It already is. Manufacturers, which is where we always look to kind of understand the way the wind blows with the economy, they're starting to see some projections that will tighten up the ropes. But we don't see this as a long-term recession like we saw in the last Great Recession we were in 2008. This is more of a short term. It'll be deep, but it will be, we hope, about 3 quarters long. So let's move on to the next slide. And when we look at who is feeling that impact the most, Kentucky is. Kentucky, there's five critical states that are continuously in the top 5, us along with Hawaii, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. Kentucky is number 1. Kentucky is number 1. It comes to the amount of unemployment claims that our citizens submitted. And we're number 1 when it comes to at-risk, vulnerable jobs that might not be coming back. These are jobs that the employer might be able to do without, technology might be replacing them. It's really hard to imagine that 12 short weeks ago, our economy was completely booming, and employers, like yourselves, were working really hard to find candidates just to apply. That was just 12 weeks ago. And in 12 weeks, we're headed towards 800,000 unemployment claims in our state. So we are number 1. And when we look at who that hits the most, those positions have mostly been felt, the loss of jobs have mainly been felt by those that have lower levels of education attainment, so under bachelor's, minority populations, and women, and younger populations. Those are the ones that have been left behind. And when you look at those with the unemployment, with the rates, those individuals that make under $40,000 a year are the ones that are really, really feeling this the most. In Kentucky, we tend to have a population that we continuously leave behind. It is our minority population. It is often women. It is usually younger. And it is usually those that don't have higher levels of education attainment. And this puts us really at risk, not just from a health perspective, are Kentuckians kind of dangerously susceptible to COVID, but from an economic perspective. When you see things like this happen, we get hit pretty hard because of our population demographics and those populations that we continue to leave behind as a state. But we can't forget, so Alice, if you want to advance, oh, that's not me swimming. We'll go one more slide. There we go. We cannot forget again that 3 short months ago, we were booming. So this is a slide a study that we're proud of out of Kentucky SHRM. In 2017, we really see when our economy was booming, where the climate was going in Kentucky. And 3 short months ago, 84% of companies, HR leaders all throughout our state, could not find qualified workers. And 81% of them had projected in 2017 that their businesses were rallying up for some sort of moderate to high growth. So what kind of keeps me up at night is we don't want to get back here. We want a booming economy, but we don't want to go through another recession, 3 quarters long, and then come out of it and be looking around and saying, where's all our people? Because we tend to do that, and that's what we just got out of. So as Kentuckians, we really have to focus now on getting ready for that booming economy again. And so as Kentuckians, what we look at is workforce participation in our state. Traditionally, Kentucky has one of the lowest workforce participation rates in the country. When we started beating this drum back in 2017, we were 47th. So we are proud that today we're 40th in the nation, but that's really not a lot to write home about. We want that number to continue to grow. And when we look at the root causes of why workforce participation continues to plague us, we want to skip one more slide. The reasons is because our disability rate is double the national average. We have the 3rd highest overdose death rate from opioids in the country. And we incarcerate more citizens for nonviolent crimes than any other state. And once we incarcerate those individuals, when they become returning citizens, we have not rehabilitated them. And we recidivate, send them back to prison at much higher levels than any other state in the country. And there's a couple reasons that ways we can find ourselves to get out of this as a state. Go one more slide. All right. So what we find is when Kentucky high school kids graduate, 7 years after graduation, they have not, about 40,000 graduates 7 years later have not obtained a degree, a certification, have stopped out, have accumulated debt, and are not working in a professional, any type of career path, career-driven field. So that continues that terrible cycle of leaving Kentuckians behind without education attainment levels, without finding a way or a path to earn more earnings. And that freedom that education and career and experience can give us at a very young age. When you think about leaving, on average, 40,000 young Kentuckians behind every year, that's about a generation. And so this is something that's very root cause that we can help with as HR leaders. And so the Kentucky Society for Human Resource, Kentucky SHRM, and our team at the Kentucky Chamber are teaming up to bring Bus to Business. We had this program last year as a pilot initiative. We said, what if we just create one day where businesses invite students in? They pay for lunch, they pay for the field trip, but they come in and they teach them all about what it means to be in business, no matter the sector, whether it's manufacturing or construction or healthcare. And we really help them see what's out there. And we did it one day. Our board, this is something they came up with, and we, in 4 months, launched it. It was a very quick turnaround, and we just piloted it. And on that day, we had about 1,500 students come, and businesses from all over the state participated. So if you look on the map, these are the schools and the businesses that really took advantage of this program. We made sure that it was of no cost to business or to the schools. Businesses paid, it was about an average of $200 per class that they invited in, depending on the mileage for how far that school was to the business, but very low cost. I mean, it was kind of the cost of a pizza party you throw for your own employees. but lights really came on for those students. It was really fun to watch. We worked really hard to be intentional about recruiting those students that don't typically get these opportunities. So we went to high-risk populations that were at high risk for lower levels of education attainment, and we worked really hard. We're being even more intentional about that this year, and we have decided to go from not just one day, but the entire next school year. So what we want to implore you, I know Allison, I think, had created a slide for you to sign up your business for this coming school year and invite students in. And what we'd also ask you is, this could be a non-traditional field trip. We don't know what the fall is going to look like for field trips with the school year. But what we've seen is this will give us an opportunity to reach more students and more populations that we haven't in the past. So we worked really hard during the days of non-traditional learning to take Bus to Business virtual. And we recorded a bunch of business leaders from across the state in tandem with young school students and had them interview each other. And we pushed this out into the living rooms all across the state. And again, we were trying to be really intentional as far as the diversity of leaders, they're by race, creed, gender, so that kids could really be what they can see, and really kind of understand that the future is open to them and start to put that into their brains. And we also thought this was a great opportunity because we could get into the living rooms of the parents as well that, might still think that the manufacturing shop is their grandfather's old manufacturing shop, and they don't see how high technological these environments have really become. So we're going to give you a link to sign up. Again, we've got scholarships available if this is something your business can't afford that you could be considered for, but really it's a low-cost way to start to get into the lives of Kentucky's future workforce, because we've got to find a way to combat those participation issues. All right, let's go forward one more. Oh, go back one more. Okay, so this is the Who's Hiring campaign that we launched at the end of March. And to be really honest, on the second day of the school shutting down, or of businesses shutting down, we saw 14,000 people in Kentucky lose their jobs. And I fell over my sink sick because we knew it was about to get way, way worse for Kentuckians. Now today we're etching up towards 800,000 3 months later. We also knew that a lot of industries were seeing a surge and needed employees to help get us through this pandemic. So we said, well, let's post a website. We'll work in partnership with the governor's team so that they can vet any jobs that come in that won't be at risk for shutdown. And we launched this page thinking we'll see a couple hundred jobs that gets posted. That'll help a little bit. But what we actually found is, weeks later, a couple months later, we were inching closer to the 80,000 mark of jobs. We've had over 800 employers fill out this survey, and close to 21,000 job seekers come and visit this website. So what I'd ask is that we're at a time where a lot of Kentuckians need help getting back on their feet. If you have a position that's open, this is a free resource to you and your company. We try to make it really painless to fill out. Go to this website and post any jobs that you have. It gets posted all across the state to all of the service providers that are helping dislocated workers. We took this a step further, and if we can go one more slide. We took the Who's Hiring campaign a couple weeks ago and we turned it into a second chance hiring campaign. If you want to click one more slide. Yeah. So because we had 80,000 openings that we captured on a website that we created 3 months ago, we said, well, who of these employers would be willing to also give a second chance to our returning citizens? We saw a lot of early releases coming out of the incarceration system. I think we got close to 1,500 to 2,000 early releases. These were low risk, nonviolent offenses that were caused by these individuals who've now served their time. And what we know when we look back at those workforce participation rates, that the key to not going back into jail is a job. That's literally the freedom that keeps them out of that system, is a job. But we all know that when you've been in the system and you come out and you've got to check that unfortunate box, it's very hard to get a job. But we also know that there's a lot of employers out there that are willing to give a fair chance, that can give a second chance. And so we just started this new Who's Hiring campaign about 3 weeks ago. Of the 800 employers, we've had 40 say that they'd be willing to be a second chance employer. So we're working on it, but we would love way more employers to fill that out. And consider your own box when you check that. You know, most of Kentuckians that are in our prison systems, 80 to 90% are in there for low-level, nonviolent crimes that have to do with drug use. And when they can't come out, there's 2 predictors of success. If they can get in treatment or a job. A job is the #1 factor that will keep them out. So if you can be a second chance employer, if you can consider your own HR policies to give these populations a fair chance and get your workplace filled, please look at it. There's a ton of numbers that the National Safety Council has pushed out that shows just how productive these citizens really are and how loyal they are to their employers when they're offered a chance. So we will give you that link. This is one of my favorite second chancers. This is Ashley McCarty. She shares her story very openly. I wish she was on. Her teammate Sonia Osmond is on the call, but they work on our workforce recovery program. So that's working with helping employers, walking them through giving second chances, taking a deep dive into your HR policies, connecting you with the talent flows of those coming out of recovery, coming into second chances. They can help you with all that, and it's all a free program. We don't ask you for anything other than just to take a look at your policies, give them a second chance, or a second eye and a second look. So this is one of my favorite second chancers. It is Ashley McCarty. The Kentucky Chamber walks the walk. We are a second chance employer, a fair chance employer. Ashley tells a really beautiful story of what employment has meant for her and her recovery, and we've given you that link. And if you do anything today, take a second to read that link and just consider your own HR policies. All right, let's move on. One more. Okay, I tried to really be considerate with time. So 3 calls to action I'm going to beg of you today. 1, please sign up to be a Bus to Business employer. There's so much our youth needs from us, especially now. It's a really, really hard time, but if you need to be able to see what the future looks like so you can start building up education and experience. So please sign up to be a Bus to Business employer. We promise we will make it easy for you. If you can be a second chance employer, check out that link as well, and we will help you get aligned to this candidates and talent pool. All of this, aside from maybe buying kids lunch on the Bus to Business Day, is free to you. And read that op-ed by Ashley McCarty. It's very powerful and will probably, I hope, brighten your day. So Lyle, I'm trying to be respectful of time. Should I stop now or answer questions?
Good work. We got a minute or two, but I want to give Brad plenty of time. So
Sure.
Got one, Allison, fire away. You know what? There's been some good chat going on. So if you're on this call with us and you don't look at that chat box occasionally, then you're missing something, because people ask questions on there and we answer the questions on there so we can kind of keep things rolling. So we're giving them links to all the things you're talking about, but we'll also follow up with these slides and make them available later today. So Allison, anything you want to pitch out here, or Autumn?
No, we don't currently have any questions for Beth, but if any come through, I'll let you guys know.
All right,
I
Beth.
see a couple asking for the links, and those were posted. So please sign up. And if you need anything, I'm happy to answer questions at any point. Pass this day or on. And thanks again so much, Lyle and Allison and Autumn. Really appreciate you all having me on today.
You bet. Thank you for being here. All right, now our next guest is Brad Patrick. Okay, he works with us in business, but he's an advisor and consultant for his own company too. But what a background this guy has. You will never meet a more experienced HR person today, almost any day this week, in fact, for months. Listen, Brad Patrick, he's 33 years experience in HR. He's worked for Frito-Lay, all these places he's worked, he's had serious leadership responsibility. But Delta Airlines, Gillette, Procter & Gamble, Sara Lee, Tempur Sealy, Sear Snacks, and most recently as the CHRO of Valvoline. Now you'd think the guy just can't hold down a job, but the fact is he has done super at all of these jobs. He's worked with, high levels of HR, communications, risk management, including talent, organizational development, large-scale change and transition. He's worked with a number of startups. Back during 9/11, he was in charge of Delta Airlines' 9/11 response globally to how they adjusted and changed their company, which, took dramatic changes. He's done a ton of merger and acquisition work. We're so fortunate, I think, to have him in Kentucky. He's here because he grew up here and he wanted to come back here a number of years ago, and we're just darn glad he did. He has just recently retired from Valvoline because he wanted to step back and do some different things. He actually just got his MBA, and so now he's going to be teaching some at UK, but he's also working on special projects on helping employers in different ways. He does a lot of executive coaching, management coaching, business consulting. And what I wanted him, I know he's been watching all these different webinars and Zoom calls and trying to stay up to date on this stuff. And I want him to share with us kind of strategically, what do you think's happening? What's changing? And how do you take what's happening and make it positive? Get the very best out of what's going to happen for your company, for your own career, and honestly, for the HR profession, because there's an opportunity here to step up, be a problem solver, help our companies come out better after this than they went in. And Brad's got a lot of thoughts about that. So Brad, we're so glad you're here. Take it away. Take us home on this call today.
Thanks, Lyle. Appreciate it. I can just be honest with you, and I think everybody in the call, is I do participate in a lot of these calls. I think at the end of these calls, I'm exhausted. And a lot of us are all focused on the current crisis there. Jim has done a great job of being tenacious and tracking down all these rules and things. And I know he's frustrated. I know we're all frustrated too. And the byproduct of all this is a crisis, as I've learned in 9/11 and in mergers, acquisitions, and all of this. It activates, if you go back to your high school or your college psychology courses, it activates this limbic aspect of your brain, and it forces your brain into this tunnel vision. And it's appropriate, it's right. And I think a lot of people are doing that, and it is exhausting. We're caught up in this kind of crisis tunnel vision mode. This tunnel vision's, kept us from getting eaten by a saber-toothed tiger back when man started. And so some of my conversation today is to recognize that and maybe start the conversation about breaking out of the tunnel and thinking about moving ahead and forward. So a lot of what I may tell you today may be stuff that you've heard or you believe, or it's very obvious that you might want to roll your eyes at me. But I want to talk about this phase of companies I'm working with and talking to about them beginning to think about this future. Some call it a new normal. Some are actually arguing that it's not going to be a new normal. They need to get back the way the things they are. However, we'll talk about that. But the other part of this, and maybe this is going to be a bit of a pep talk for HR professionals, Lyle and his team collected feedback from people with these calls. And a lot of the discussion and a lot of the requests that came up were, let's start talking about the next phase, the strategy of business, and also let's talk more about what HR people should be doing. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. If you look at this list that's on your screen right now, I'm not going to debate these. I think they're real. Your current processes are being tested. The rules are changing all the time. The financial environment's different. Your work priorities are different. The org structure and the work processes that you had in January don't meet the needs of today's. Hiring conditions have completely changed. When I was at Valvoline hiring for the instant oil change business, the 4,000 plus employees that we hired per year, we had a 20% ghosting rate. That means you hire people and 20% of them don't even show up for the first day of work. That's all changed. We're in a different world. Also, the other part is important parts of your culture have been tested. And I know we don't see that in the daily things, but it is being impacted. Next slide. So yeah, you are dealing with a new normal, in my opinion. I'm going to suggest to you that you have a new normal, you have new conditions. I think it's exciting. I'm going to take the path, and I always try to be the practical, optimistic guy here, but you also have an incredible opportunity ahead of you. And I will talk about that as an HR professional as well. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to talk about evaluating and revising your strategies. We're going to talk about leveraging your role as an HR professional while we do that. And one comment I wanted to make is, you know, I try to be very practical. I'm an Eastern Kentucky boy, and I think a lot of businesses have hired me and have appreciated being very practical, but there is a conceptual, a theoretical thing to think about. Businesses that are going to be best positioned to handle this coming out will be the ones that have strong alignment in vision and values. They're going to be an organization with a good command of their work and the work priorities. They're going to have good alignment with their customers and suppliers. They're going to have solid processes, strong management capabilities. They may even show leadership capabilities. They're going to have a trust-based relationship with their workforce. They're going to have strong commitment to what's going on. So a lot of the things you're dealing with is a byproduct of this. So if you think about this conceptual, theoretical, perfect, dreamy organization that exists out there, that's your destination, that's your goal, and what you're dealing with are the gaps. So that's what we'll talk about as the business goes on. Pick up a copy of Fortune magazine in February, and then pick up the Fortune magazine in March. It's two different complete conversations. It's the world has changed. So next slide. So Jim, I pushed the next slide here, but I want to first start with my second topic. It's about the HR professional. And what I want to suggest to you is to sit down, just breaking out of the tunnel vision, think about the people in your business or organization who get out of bed, feet hit the floor, and the majority of what they think about are related to people, organization, and culture. Just make that long list of people. Now, everybody in your business hopefully thinks about it, but make the list of people who think about that, who have this view of the business in that manner. And that list is going to be very small, and it's going to be HR people. It's going to be in small businesses, the loneliest job in the facility, probably the HR department of one, to the small departments to larger offices. Is this HR professional in this crisis, is one of the very, very important role. And I probably get too excited and too energized by crisis and big changes in business because I know that's when the organization needs me the most. So the thing I call with HR teams is this unique perspective. You spend your time walking around, looking, thinking, executing, acting, responding, communicating with people, with organization and cultural consideration there. You see it in the heaviest way. You have visibility to the organization dynamics about how people work and their workflows, how people work together and they coordinate, and the distractions that may be coming in. You have a relationship with employees that may be understanding their family situation, their concerns, the issues that their needs there. You have an awareness of the changing laws, the programs, and the requirements. And you see the gaps and where they don't fit anymore first. The gray areas between the policies and procedures. You now also are the one in your business or organization that has beginning to understand or see outside the external hiring market. My point here as an HR professional is that you have this very unique perspective that the business needs now, and especially as we start the conversation of moving to this next phase overall. That last bullet point, you also, by nature of this, being on this webinar, as well as other things in relationships and SHRM and calling each other, the ability to network with other professionals and have access to their best practices. You can also learn from people who've messed things up and what not to do. This is very powerful for where a lot of people in a lot of businesses, a lot of business professions don't have that. So keeping on with that, what are we going to do to deliver your perspective? And my first advice and suggestion is escape the tunnel. It's a mindset. See this as a positive opportunity. You can't change the pandemic. You can't change the conditions. You can't change the financial situation. You can't control the unemployment office's ability to pay. But if you can take this as a positive opportunity for growth and to try new things. One of the biggest areas that I've always, if you've heard me preach and teach and lead and carry on as an HR professional, you know that I've identified this thing called uncertainty as this poison in an organization. If you can think of a little monster and call it uncertainty. That is a massive, violated, poisonous issue walking around your business, is the concept of uncertainty. And I think it's a great mindset to take, that your mission is to eliminate or minimize uncertainty. It's just a different way to look at it, but it's something it's a goal that will help your organization move ahead. You also may need to help your organizations confirm its values and commitments. You've spent some time, you have a management team that writes policies and rules and so forth, and hopefully they're based on good values and commitments. Now is a great time to remind people of those. And sometimes, if the situation is showing you some weak spots in those values and commitments in your practices, this is a great time to take the opportunity to establish some new commitments. Working with the leadership team with your unique perspective and the people around you to understand where maybe we can be more clear of what we're committed to, especially if you're a business that said people are our most important asset and you just lay the third of them off. People are going to question that. So I think this is a great time to establish new commitments. And also, being a quality change leader is part of an HR role, whether you're a facilitator or the communicator. But quality communications includes listening. And one of the things I've always set up with the HR teams I've supported and businesses I've supported are things called listening posts. And all that is just a simple application of getting your HR team members or other managers or supervisors and asking them to go out and just listen to people. They don't need to go convince them of anything or teach them or sell anything to them. Just go listen and then roll that up. We used to call that in my businesses the moves and rhythms of the business. And every time we communicated something, we sent the team out to go get people, not to formally survey them or to badger them, but just go talk to people and bring that back and use that to shape your communications going forward. Obviously, you've talked about and you're aware that frequent, dependable group and individual communications are important. The word I have underlined here is continuous. One of the things we know about people is that they are very motivated and they can find positive feelings and actually pursue hopefulness if the nature of your communications has some type of continuous nature to it. Progress is very motivating to people. So make sure that when you communicate, you're just not recapping all of the bad news or even recapping all the uncertainty, but spend time connecting people to the progress that's being made, things that are coming along, and you will find that the workforce will move with you, and they will get energy, and they'll feel some positivity, and maybe even build more hopefulness if there is a continuous growth of that. And then, all of your quality communications need to be measured by how much trustworthiness and trust you're building. If you think about our perfect organization, and the gaps that you're managing against this conceptual perfect organization, make sure you're measuring your communications by the trust and trustworthiness that you're building. One of the things that many people who know me that I carry on and preach about to fight the uncertainty animal is to not just be consistent, but be predictable. And consistency is doing the same thing a policy tells you. Predictability uses your values, your beliefs, your commitments as an organization, your principles as an organization to be predictable. And I think that's the perfect world, the theoretical world you're pursuing, is to be a trustworthy organization so that people can predict how you're going to make decisions. And then the last point in this slide, the key point as an HR professional, is you have this wonderful opportunity to roll up your unique perspective and make that a data point into your business, not only for the daily operations, but for an ongoing basis. Said a different way is you can't show up to the business with individual situations and problems. Your team, your management team, your people around you, supervisors, your employees, they're frightened. They have fear. They have fear of rules and laws and changes and being laid off and family issues and all that. They need you as an HR professional to pull your unique perspective together, balance out and prioritize and offer solutions. So maybe that's a bit of a pep talk for all of us in HR who sometimes I know feel like they're the loneliest person in the building because you see and you're in the middle of all that, but that's a big key part. So let's switch over to the business strategy part of it. I have to make the first statement to make sure my MBA investment was worth it. Sustainable business strategy is about creating value by satisfying stakeholders' needs and interests. that's my business school statement. But the point I want to make with that is your stakeholders are much broader than what traditionally is thought about of just your owners, shareholders, customers, clients. It involves a lot of people now, your community, recognition of things like the George Floyd situation going on right now, and people being eaten up with all these opportunities to, find certainty out there. So your stakeholders are much broader, much more interested in what you're doing in many parts of the business. The challenge in doing that is to recognize the differences between now and what it was just 3 months ago. And the unprecedented nature of this makes this really difficult that everybody's going through at the same time. And one thing you're going to be challenged with are some timelines. A lot of the business executive teams I work with, they always want to have a 3-year or 5-year plan and strategy in place. And my suggestion to them is, I don't think you have enough information at this point to do it. Your time frame is going to be much shorter that you're working on. So I think what you're needing to do are probably a series of small strategy adjustments and revisions. My suggestion, though, is always to begin with that future state in mind. Think about what you want the world to be and how you want to exist in the world, and then plan from where you are today to it. And this approach is different than taking where you are today and trying to plan for what you know today. That just puts you into guessing mode. So this is just a strategic thought to try to, as much as you can in each time frame that you choose, to try to understand what the environment will look like and what you want it to look like, and then plan forward to that thing. And that's where the change management comes in. As an HR professional, I believe what you have the opportunity to do is to gather your management teams, leadership teams at all levels, and just you be the facilitator. I'm known as a strategic HR professional, but what that largely means is I pull people together to engage in strategy conversations. And I use tools. I suggest you can go back to the tried, true, and tested. There's the old SWOT method out there. It's just something to get a conversation started about what you're trying to do as a business and to reevaluate where you are. I have it suggested there you extend it into the TOES model. That's not an often used, but you can Google it. There's a little picture there. And what that really does, and what I love about it, it looks at the situation as an opportunity. What are your strengths as a business and who you are to take advantage of the opportunity? So Google that and look at that as an opportunity. I think scenario planning, as I mentioned a few moments ago, is going to be very useful. I've been suggesting to businesses to simply put a plan together to September of 2020. That's it. That's all you can do right now. And then when you get good and you feel comfortable about the path you're on, extend it out to the end of the year. And then earn your way, earn your right, earn your path to think a little bit broader beyond that. Maybe now is the time that hopefully your purpose is good, but you might want to challenge your mission, vision, and values against the new conditions. Just test them. Bring a list of what you had or what you believe, your policies, and have your management team, your leadership folks, your employees just think about where they don't make sense. One of the areas is probably workplace flexibility. It's a new area. Another area that I'm very pleased with is that the people that are being considered essential workers, that puts them in a new light. I like the concept that this economy doesn't move without essential people having jobs. But that's a great opportunity for you to start that conversation. And then recognize that the strongest business strategies are simple, clear, and they're synchronized. You have financial and capital strategies, you have customer and client strategies, you have operational strategies, and you have people strategies. The best businesses in that theoretical model I gave you, those are very fully integrated. And this is where you, as a high-value, high-impact HR professional, can bring it all together by your unique perspective and integrate all those perspectives overall. You have a great opportunity to provide leadership in this area. I'm very excited. I've loved being an HR person. We're here to help in any way we can. Best of success to you. I'd love to hear how things go. I'm going to turn that back over to you. Let me hit one slide here. I'm watching our time. We've gone over. These are just things you can do right now. Take the point person responsibilities to lead and provide input for communications. You see I have it, communications, the third power there. That's the frequency and dependability and the progress. Use a measure of your work. How much have you eliminated or you minimized uncertainty? And the quick story with that is Eliminate uncertainty by telling people what you're doing, why you're doing, and how you're doing it. Minimize the areas that you can't completely address by telling people what you stand for and becoming predictable about how you handle them. Once again, recognize your January 20 organization structure, process, policies, and procedures are not set up for today or tomorrow. So all that work you put into over the last few years in the groove that you got yourself into, they're not going to work. The next point is a longer story. I'll try to be short with it. Manage the work. What that means is I have managers who come to me and say, Brad, my team is overwhelmed. It's out of control. They're miserable. What can you tell me? I can say, well, I think their boss sucks. Now, I say that because I love them and they know that I want them to work and be successful. But managers' jobs are to make sure that work equals resources. Now anybody who likes their company, who enjoys work and likes what they're doing, are always going to think about the things that they want to do or they can do. That's fine. That's good to be challenging to get more performance. But being overwhelmed means that they can't get to it. It's stressful. The definition of stress is when your resources can't match your capabilities or are greater than your capabilities. When we design organizations, we begin with mission critical work and we build from there. It's very good for you as an HR leader to help your business leaders understand the idea to manage the work. Re-clarify the roles and responsibilities. Think about work that needs to be stopped. Think about work that needs to be started, what work needs to continue, and what you should delay. And then find places to lock in some key processes. I tried to go fast there, Lyle. I hope it's useful to people. As you know, I'm always aware to talk with people about it. I'm going to jump it back to you.
Thank you, Brad. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry that you had to rush. This is very helpful. I found it inspiring. Hope everybody else did too. Thank you, our guests who hung on in here with us. We plan on being back next week. Don't miss the SHRM codes and the HRCI code at the end on the last page. Keep up your good work and continue to communicate with us and let us know what's important because we'll respond to it. Thank you all very much. Have a blessed day, a great week. We'll see you next Monday. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.